Like
I
your
know,
roads.
what account though, is what I'm saying, capital
General
projects
fund.
or
It's
general
not-
fund?
It's just from the general fund, yes.
Okay, thanks.
Okay, we okay? Everybody's okay with, putting, option one in the budget for 2025?
Okay, so we'll rework these numbers and you'll have fresh numbers for the hearing.
All right.
The only other note on here is just, again, the 2017 loan payment is paid out of this fund, so that's shown in this balance.
All right, well done, guys. All right, capital projects fund.
Okay, so moving over to capital here. On the revenue side, again, we continue to see increased interest rates, which helps us all around. Budgeting conservatively going forward for 2025. The grants that you're showing there under revenue, that is the LSA grant that we were just awarded for the purchase of a wood chipper. So it's gonna come in, go right back out, so that's a 1-to-1. And then the transfer from general fund, that's simply to move the money from the general fund to the capital projects. Moving down onto the expenditure side, under general government, the building security enhancements, this is the installation of cameras down at Public Works. That is the last piece of the municipal complex that's not under camera. Recently, the chief secured a garage where they will store stolen vehicles or things that need to be locked up, so these cameras would have eyes on that. We've used it for
We're sharing it.
We're sharing.
It's just if we need it, everybody else is out for the small period of time.
Yeah, and it's a secure space, so these cameras would have eyes on that man door and garage door, as well as the rest of the complex. Next year, Mr. Harris and I did speak about potentially relocating the yard waste dumpster down to Public Works as a trial run basis. We're hoping that with the addition of cameras, they would be situated to catch license plates of people coming in and out of the space in the off hours. Because we have figured that this year with the yard waste dumpsters being up in Prospect, we've noticed increased costs on our end, that they're now being removed or emptied weekly instead of bi-weekly. Because we do feel that landscape companies are bringing things there for a free ride. Additionally, other items are being disposed of there that should not be, and the borough is now incurring costs to remove that because it's becoming a dumping ground. So we would like to try putting the yard waste dumpster down at Public Works for the year to see if it being in a well-lit, secured area with cameras, if that would then reduce our costs coming out of Health and Sanitary Department. So that's what that 9,000 there represents. Borough beautification, the expense for this year was simply the new 12 Welcome to Whitehall signs. We're not anticipating any signage projects going forward for 2025. Mrs. Thomas had mentioned, you may have noticed that the Welcome to Whitehall sign down at Cassie Village is no longer. We're working with insurance to replace that after an automobile took it out. Moving down to the administrative refurbishment, this is the continuation of the refurb of this level here. What's remaining on this level is essentially the hallways in the U shape now that we've moved council chambers over into this room. Additionally, we will be relocating these security doors. As council chamber is moving from that room into here, we need to revamp where those doors are for public meeting spaces, as well as the addition of 3 panic buttons. After discussing with the chief and the library to have those upstairs at the library, one at administration and one over at the code enforcement office that would ring down, beep downstairs in the event that they are needed.
At the dispatch center.
Yes, so that's all included under the administrative refurbishment there. As you can see, council chambers, furniture, those are zeroing out for next year. The solar energy has been moved into the next year's budget. We do have a pre-construction meeting for that on Tuesday, but we're not anticipating any of that work being done in this fiscal year, so we're moving it forward, and that 73 is the bid. As we discussed previously, that's obviously more than the anticipated 50 that we had budgeted, but we feel confident with our clean air grant application that's in there. They actually have been scored, we're waiting for awards, but fingers crossed on that end. But additionally, the direct pay credits that we could receive from the Inflation Reduction Act would bring that closer to the original 50. Plus, if we get the grant, it could wipe out that cost entirely, but
Do we think the grant could potentially cover all 73?
I'm hoping. The mayor had heard through the grapevine that not many people applied for the Clean Air Fund grants, so we put in our applications. We're hoping that we will get something. Ideally, the 73 would cover that.
Actually, I have to give credit where credit's due. Who's my wife as the chair of the Whitehall Committee for Environmental Action that actually discovered that not too many people were applying for this grant. And so encourage Courtney to push through and So hopefully we'll get it.
Yeah, and we also use that fund, we applied, John McCray and I from the Shade Tree worked on our Radford Road planting grants through that. So we have a couple out there, cause there's apparently a fair amount of money that they have not spent, and that people aren't applying for, so we are confident that our chances are somewhat good for something, hopefully all of it. And I'm gonna toss this over to Chief here for public safety, he can talk about.
Before we move on, we were not given the grant for the replacing the roof on this building.
Correct.
Have we thought about, is that somewhere in the budget?
Not for next year, no. So if you recall, we were unsuccessful in the multimodal or multi-municipal purpose, it's a very long title. We were unsuccessful. So I currently have a grant application for LSA funding, it's that same project, just a different pot of money. So I'm working on that, it's due by the end of the month. We recently approved the resolution for that. That would be funding we wouldn't see until 2026, and potentially, then that could be like a 27 project. But no, that's not budgeted for 2025, but it's certainly on the radar of large capital projects that you need to consider keeping your reserves for.
Is
'Cause
there
that's-
any reason to believe that that job should be done sooner rather than later?
No, the roof warranty, the warranty is still there on the roof. This is really just preemptive. And our roof, it's not,
Leaking?
yeah,
We don't
knock
know.
on something. But the warranty is running out, so knowing that, you know, the life of things, we've had some, leaking issues up in the library. Obviously, that's what tied in the library lighting portion of that grant. So, you know, nothing's dire right now, but that could very easily change, and that would be a very expensive project that I would hate to see us, you know, caught off guard with. So it's important to keep that in mind with our reserves.
So on the same note there, the heating system kind of seems throughout the building is
Yeah.
coughing along.
Mhm.
But there's,
No,
what
that's,
do we, I mean,
Bill just put his jacket on.
Bill just put his jacket on, I
I
brought
put my
coffee.
gloves on, yeah.
it's hot or cold in this
It's
this
hot or
building.
cold, the library and the patrons of the library have said the same to many of us as well. I don't know, folks, we gotta make it, we have to make the workspace and the visiting space appropriate. How do we do that?
I mean, again, it's never been a priority as far as capital expenditures, you know, the focus has been on parks, safety, certainly the safety of this building is high priority of
Right.
late. But it is something that those systems at some point are gonna just stop working.
Right, so shouldn't we have a line item in here for fixing it?
For 2025 or just something on deck?
Anybody?
I'd argue that there's two things on here that I would put ahead of repairing the heating. They fall under recreation,
Okay.
as you may have guessed.
Steps.
The
What?
heating's here, it's not comfortable all the time.
We layer.
It varies a lot.
I mean,
But- and
the
I do
lack of
think it's
air
something we
conditioning
need to-
upstairs is bad.
We need to really think about it.
Yeah.
I am willing to skip it for this year and keep the other two items in.
I would agree. Okay, we go to public
So I'm gonna
safety.
toss it to Jason.
Okay. And I think Kurt might be on.
Oh, that's fine. Come on.
Well, I can, yeah, you can come up. I'll
Sorry to
start
throw
off
you
by
under the bus, I knew that was coming.
I'll start off by saying that we have essentially completed all of our 2024 projects. They come in either at budget or below budget. We're still waiting for the $3,400 reimbursement from the Department of Justice towards the ballistic vest that we replaced today. That would be the internal panels that are underneath these external carriers. It should be in by the end of the year, maybe the first quarter of next year. The grant is good through next year. The two police vehicles that were ordered in 2023, that were supposed to be here in the spring, finally showed up in October. So we're hoping to get one of them back, one of them ready for service by the end of next week. And then the other one should go a little faster, moving it in. I was looking at putting them out for bid or trading them in. The trade-in value was 3 times higher than what they seem to be catching for bid, so we're gonna let them go as a trade-in this
The
year.
more the better, chief.
Then for next year, council already gave me permission to order the 2 replacement vehicles for next year. They are on order. They're slated to come in around the spring, but the way the automobile industry is, I will say they're coming sometime next year. What the manager and I had been talking about, the 2022 police vehicle that is set to be replaced next year. We are considering holding on to it, moving the 2017 code enforcement vehicle. That vehicle is out of warranty. The 2022, if we keep it and let it be the code enforcement vehicle, it'll still have 2 more years of warranty left on it. If we keep it in service as the police vehicle, that's not gonna be the case because of the mileage. We're still in a replacement process with the cars, so we don't have to do everything brand new unless in 2026 Ford decides to change the body styles. We do think that we're gonna get through one more cycle of just switching the cars over and reusing the equipment. So probably by 27, we might be it'll be the full cost of new emergency equipment, and if we change platforms or Ford does something different, we'll have to look at that. The only other thing that I was going to, well, 2 things I was gonna cover. Next year, we are proposing to install 2 sets of investigative traffic cameras in Prospect Park. One would cover the primary entrance point, which is Radford and Parkline. The second would cover the secondary access point, which is Maple, Dunluce, and Holyrood. We think if they position the cameras correctly, we can also capture vehicles going into Prospect Ballfield. The total cost of that, including the hardware, the infrastructure cost, and the licensing and internet access for next year would be almost $38,000. I have been talking with Post Road Management, which is the largest property manager in the area we know as Prospect Park. They call it Hillside Meadows. Now, they are about 80% towards my funding proposal. They don't have their actual budget meeting until December, but what I had asked them to do is to cover the one-time infrastructure cost at both locations, which involves installing a pole, whether it's a utility pole or a metal pole, the trenching that we need to run the power connections from one of their buildings, and also tree removal or pruning. So I asked them to commit $6,000 per intersection, which would be $12,000 total, which would obviously bring down the cost of what we have to do. They are very interested in it. When I asked for a written confirmation, they can't do it yet because they have their budget meetings. I asked them if I could say, do we have a verbal commitment? And she said, I would say you're 80% of the way there. They haven't really hit any big objections to it.
So that would be 12,000 that we would take out of the 38?
Yes.
Thank you.
And then moving forward in 2026, the annual cost for the system would move over into the line item where we already pay for the existing traffic cameras that we have. We have 2 locations, 51 Street Front Road, and we have a complete ring around Cassidy Village. And these traffic cameras are connected to a larger 7-county system. There's 1,400 cameras on the network, and they're capturing information for close to 10 million plates a week. And it greatly assists us when it comes time to solve crimes, because we can go in and see what's coming through the community and where else they have gone within Allegheny, Westmoreland, Washington, Beaver, Butler, and as high as Mercer.
Are there cameras in the mall area too?
Oxford might have their own cameras. This is around Cassidy Village on the intersections.
Yes, on the streets that you're referring to, I think, yes,
Yeah.
they're there. 19 and, what's the other, the side street off of, in front of South Hills Village.
Yeah.
Yeah, they're there.
They're all over the place.
They're there.
And then the other thing was traffic calming. That used to be called radar, I think. We're proposing to change that to traffic calming and increase it to $10,000 for next year. And the reason being is we're looking at Spring Valley to figure out exactly if there is a need. I will say the preliminary, what we've done so far on Spring Valley, it seems to be it's more of a volume issue than it is speed. However, there are some things that we could maybe consider depending on what the final result of the study is. We could use this line item if we decide to put permanent radar speed signs down there like we did on Brownsville Road, or if we were looking at some temporary speed cushions or something that could go on the roadway seasonal. If it's something that's larger, that would require asphalt, that would come out of the road policy, or the road program, per the traffic calming policy. And then the rest is up to the deputy chief.
Okay, Kurt, you're up. I told you.
Good morning,
Give you time to get ready.
afternoon. We are, asking and requesting, the duty handgun upgrade, that's $30,000. Our duty handguns are over 10 years old now, the life expectancy is around 10 years to 12. We've had these pistols now for, like I said, it's actually going on 11 plus years. I got some numbers from our vendors that we utilize, and with new handguns, sights, optics on the handguns, flashlights, holsters, everything, new magazine pouches, it's all come to about $30,000. Our vendor would also take our old guns as a trade-in value. He gave me a verbal of $250 per firearm, asking to purchase 24 handguns. We have 20 officers, obviously, as you know. However, we always have a couple extras. For example, we have one that's not working currently, so we're down to like 23 working pistols. But they would, and if an officer is involved in something, they take their pistol for testing and things like that. So they would be down a pistol. So that's why we're asking for 24 pistols for the officers.
What's your service weapon?
It
The
also,
current pistol we carry is a Glock 21, which is the full-size 45 caliber. We're looking to move to a 9mm pistol, Glock 45 or Glock 17, with an RMR on it for a sight optic, or whatever you want to term it. I was able to get from we use Officer Store as our vendor, and they provided us one to test. So officers can see what it looks like, how it feels, things like that. So we're in the testing phase of that. But like I said, we're kind of at the life end of our duty pistols now. So that's why we're asking for this for 2025.
Will there have to be additional training by the officers when you move to a new, how does that work? When you move to a new,
The new platform for
Yeah.
us as an agency would be the optic on it. That would be new for us. It's a newer thing. Most agencies have moved to that already. That would be the only training that we need to transition to, as opposed to what are fixed iron sights, they're called. This optic is just a more, it's a newer inventive tool for the officers, just for them to fire, picking up that sight when they come out of the holster, utilizing it. Minimal, but yes.
okay.
Kurt, has there ever been any thought of using Shaghawk? I would imagine each of the municipalities have to redo this, order their guns every so often. So has it ever been looked at? Maybe we could do a bid joining on that.
There has not been, to my knowledge, so each agency, each department, for us, for example, we issue officers with a duty gun. Other agencies require their officers to purchase their own firearm that they have to maintain. You know, the best practice says that the agency should provide it and have backups. Like that's why I was asking for where we're gonna purchase 24, because if an officer gets involved in a shooting, they're going to, the county's gonna take their pistol and they're gonna examine it, they're gonna test fire, they're gonna do all the things that they're gonna do, and that takes months. So if you're requiring an officer to have a duty gun that they purchase, and they get involved in something, they're not out of service, they can't come back to work until they purchase a new firearm or one that's, regulated by the department.
Mr. Meath, as far as Shaghawk goes, as he explained, there's too much individuality in between the departments with the make, model, and caliber that they carry. Like Shaghawk does the bid for police vehicles. Well, you basically pick between a Ford, a Chevy, or a Dodge. When you look at the 22 police departments in Shaghawk, there could be 15 different platforms that are being utilized. Now, the guy that we deal with, these prices are based off of CoStar, which is the state bid contract. We know that we're getting the best deal by going through the CoStar bid. And he's right, the reason why we maintain the spare, if a weapon does malfunction and it has to go out for service, we don't keep the officer off duty. We give them the spare and they're able to continue to do their work. And we do, it's annual annual
firearms
maintenance on
inspections
all the weapons.
for each weapon that we
They'll
have.
try to do one shift at a time. We can give them the spares. They can still perform their duty. We get the inspection done, and then you get your gun back, and you give the spares back, and it continues to transition through. And then as far as training, we always do training with the guns. We will have to qualify on a new platform,
Oh, okay.
but we don't consider qualifying as training.
We're required to qualify once a year at minimum.
Right.
We typically do it twice, but also when there's a nuance to that. When you go qualify, you can't then train that same day. You have to train different days. So qualifying is qualifying, training is training. There's been issues with that regarding agencies and best practices and lawsuits. We could be here all day talking about that. I'll spare you the details, but that's how they qualify now. You have to qualify on this day, and for training, we have to provide training on different days,
Okay.
which we do. But like the chief said, these would be in service until that officer gets trained up on a new optic.
Mhm.
Then they would have to qualify, and once they're qualified, you're good. But if
So
you-
it won't be everybody switches like on one day, obviously, because we can't have everybody qualified the same day.
It will
so-
definitely occur within a week.
Yeah, within a
Oh,
week.
wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, if
That's
we
a lot.
had to, we
That's a
could
lot.
qualify the whole department in a day, but we will spread it out a little.
Okay.
You know, the way to look at these, this is the most important tool we have. It's the tool we never wanna use, but if the tool does have to come out, we wanna be proficient with it.
Yeah, thank you.
Anything else?
Any other questions?
And then the other, topic I would, like to talk about, again, there was talk for the pedestrian, signals is the bottom line of the public safety police part. These are the pedestrian signs at the intersection of Baptist, Brownsville, and Provost. They are probably past their expiration date. Some of them work, some of them don't. The lighting on them is not very good. Reached out to two different, vendors for traffic system solutions and, traffic control equipment and supplies. I put a line item in there for $10,000 if the council wants to do that. There'd be a total replacement of that whole intersection with pedestrian signs, the push buttons, all that stuff. One quote was at $9,800, the other one was $8,900. And again, that's at the intersection of Baptist, Brownsville, Provost.
We did look at repairing them, and the
Did we?
price was like half of what it is to put the newer.
The repair cost was about $5,000 from both companies. And again, they both said like, they're old, he goes, you're probably putting bad money after, you're putting good money after bad. It's just not gonna last very long at all. You know, those probably been there for 25 years.
I did watch a show the other day from the early '80s, I won't say which one it was, but as the opening credits, those signs that are there were prominently displayed in the beginning, so they're old.
Okay. Thanks, sir. Okay, I guess recreation, we're ready to move to.
Well, no, I just wanna follow up on, the public safety fire, what is represented there, the joint fire study, as we've discussed previously, you know, Ms. Book, Mr. Beef, and Mr. Chetty was at a couple meetings with myself, all of our counterparts at Baldwin Borough, Brentwood Borough, and their respective fires. This represents Whitehall's share of a potential joint fire study. And then there's no fire equipment being expended in 2025, but that 50 that was spent this year helped them purchase their SCBA's. Moving down to the public works capital, these are simply their truck replacement. That $50,811 is the wood chipper grant, as I mentioned previously. And then Mr. Harris had described the need for new lawn equipment, so that's what that last item there represents.
Courtney,
Yes.
remind me what the vehicle is again, I'm sorry.
It's the June trucks.
The standard public works trucks.
Yes. Now you can move to recreation.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Larry.
I was ahead of myself. I'm
No,
sorry.
it's okay.
They were big ticket items too.
So, listed here, we did carry over the pool complex capital cost, that $61,000 represents a pool cover, that had been tabled, obviously because the bid came in very high this year. If that's something council is still interested in, that's what that line item represents, so if we need direction to include that or not.
Have you ever seen any grants? I'm curious.
Pool
I
cover
know, it's kind of a weird thing.
specifically?
Worth a
I've
shot.
never looked
Worth a shot.
specifically, but,
What was the bid last year? Came in?
it came in at like $100,000, which was wildly over all the estimates. I think it was a lot of the timing of when the bid went out, to be quite honest. So,
I would like to see it stay in there, but obviously keep it at 60,000, 61,000.
Well, I'm not sure I do.
You don't
I
agree with
just-
anything I ever said.
Right. Um,
Disagree.
the idea of the pool cover was to extend the life of the pool, if I remember,
The water.
to save water.
make up numbers. If we could extend the pool life for 10 years, to up to 10 years, but if we don't use it, it would be like 8, and we're already 2 behind. I'm not sure that there's any real benefit. I'm not explaining that well, am I,
No.
Steve?
No, I get what you're saying.
So
I
the-
get what you're saying,
yes.
but there's also the idea that we wouldn't have to completely drain and refill the pool every year.
So that
And
was
that
the
would
thought.
save us.
Doesn't matter when you start the plan. You're saying we're already 2 years into the plan, we're.
Well, no, the surface of the pool,
The liner.
the liner probably has to be replaced 10 to 12 years, or 10.
I think that's a manufacturer warranty on that.
Oh.
I will
So then
say,
we're only, the cost that we're saving is maybe strictly some water costs, but we'd still have to send it through some kind of cleaning purpose, so I'm not at all sure that it's worth it to put a pool cover on at this point.
I mean, we've certainly managed without it. It's,
Do we have, what did we spend to drain and then refill?
water and sewer costs each year, I wanna say 10 and 20 respectively, that we pay every year to fill it up, pay
So
it.
$30,000.
I'm gonna spitball that, don't hold me to
Right,
it,
okay, but
yeah.
even if it's only $20,000, we've potentially
Exactly.
covered our costs here. I would like to see it kept in
That's a good
and
comment.
see what happens. See what happens on the bids. Maybe the bids come back and they are reasonable. Maybe they come back and they're very unreasonable and we don't do it, but,
Or you get a grant.
well, I mean, see if we can find one, but.
But if
That would
we
be
have a
my
problem
argument.
with the lining, we have to drain the pool anyway, whether we have a cover on it or not.
Depending on the,
Where
what the need is, yeah.
Okay.
So, is that something that council would like to see stay in then?
Majority, I'm in favor of keeping it in.
Okay.
Stone, good.
I think we need to get the quote earlier.
And that was something we
Right,
discussed.
it just,
Yeah, that I think impacted certainly we only received one single bid, which we don't like to do. Okay, then moving down, the next two are related to finishing up Over and Overlook Park. The field renovations, at $20,000, post-construction, the baseball field out there needed some work. Public Works went up and we really did everything that they were able to do to bring it back into playable condition. And it wasn't quite there. So we did consult with representatives from GBWAA, got their input, their recommendations on both vendors and what kind of material that, works for them and their organization. So quotes are being solicited for that work, but it's well beyond what Public Works can do to effectively meet their needs. And that is a very highly used park, as we know, was, and we're anticipating it being even more heavily used now with the recent renovations. So that $20,000 is for the ball field specifically.
And, excuse me, but if you looked in the original plan, there was a lot built in for drainage for
Yes.
that ball field. And actually, the associations, when they had a meeting, sat down and they looked at the expense of putting in draining. And they agreed that the renovations, at least it's my understanding, I wasn't at the meeting, but my understanding is they agreed that the renovations for this amount were more practical for their needs.
Yes, yeah, and we consulted with them extensively. They actually recommended vendors that they have used, that they prefer. So it's really, it will meet their needs certainly. I'm gonna follow their guidance on it.
is this just field material or is
It's
this,
the whole infill mix
it's
there.
just the infill mix?
Yeah, the mix,
Okay.
I mean, the grading,
Sure, but we're
all
not
of
talking
that.
any like equipment, like benches, fences,
no,
things like
no,
that.
This is
Just,
simply to bring the
Infill,
field itself
okay.
into playable condition to meet their needs.
got it.
Would that be comparable with what they did at Union?
So yes and no, the material is similar, like that red brick clay, I believe
that's
is
working,
what
huh?
that's what they like. I think that's what the pirate grant that they get a lot
Yeah.
uses. But yeah, I contacted the individual that Mr. Seifert himself had recommended, and, you know, he knew exactly what the genie likes, needs, uses, so based kind of off of those specs, that's what we'd be seeking quotes for.
Great.
And then the next one is obviously the phase 2 steps, that a bid has been received, is on the table again for the November 20th meeting. Obviously significantly cheaper than originally thought, it's a really good bid price, but that's what that line item represents. And then if the council wants to consider, prospect steps, rebuilding them, that's what the 350 is. So again, we just need some
Comments on the
guidance.
steps,
Yeah,
I think
why is there
most-
so much money for prospect steps?
well, I think it's gonna
So
be,
big.
I don't think we're in
There's
favor of it
34
anyway,
steps.
so.
Yeah.
Am I right about that? The steps, I don't think that we need to spend 200, it's not even being used.
350. No, they're
350.
currently
It's
closed,
really
so we, you know, obviously we haven't marked, this individuals can't be going up and down it. But anecdotally, what we know from Shim, one of the biggest users of the summer camp over there, you know, from Public Works and the police driving around and what they see, most people access that park via the driveway, because it's paved, wider, well-lit. Those steps are long and steep. And we have not, to this point, received any complaints that they've been closed, so it's just a liability there with them, existing. But yes, most people, from what we understand, don't enter the park that way, they come down through the driveway.
Shouldn't we remove,
Yeah.
shouldn't we have
Well,
some
that's
cost for removing the steps so that they're not a liability hazard?
So Mr. Harris and I spoke of that, because it is something that he feels that Public Works could demolish them, you know, take some time. The question is then, where do you put all that material?
At the dump at the other
our-
side of that park.
That would fill up that dump and really hamper their needs over there. It would need to be hauled off site. So Mr. Harris and I have been spitballing if it's something that council is comfortable with, leave the steps closed as is for 2025 and allow us to reach out to, if we need to bid something in 2026 for removal of that waste, or oftentimes contractors that are working in the borough, you know, they'll take things for clean fill. We may be able to work some contacts so there wouldn't be any cost for hauling off that waste, but if not, in 2026, it'd be something to consider the demolition costs of those steps.
Gotcha.
Could-
Good, Lisa.
Sorry. Is there concern though, if we don't start demolishing in 2025 from a liability standpoint? If somebody were to,
They are blocked off now with plywood. We did have some
Okay.
individuals, you know, trespassing on it and not adhering to the signs and
Okay.
the tape that we had originally put up, so they went over and built, you know,
oh,
if
okay,
there's a large plywood there that, blocks off them, I mean, you walk around it and you wanna go down through the woods, that's always exists there, but we've secured it to the best of our ability at this point, aside from renting fencing for the whole, run.
Liability, we're okay with that.
But she said that they've done everything they could do, that any logical or any reasonable person would not choose to go to those steps.
Yeah, I mean, it's big green letters, says closed, and we did that
They
again
put up a
after
sign.
Yeah, we have it posted on our social media, on our website, we've taken steps, but people are gonna do what they do. So we feel comfortable that with the amount of, you know, Public Works in there Monday through Friday, police there 24/7, you know, as part of their things, that we could hold off on this for a year and then really discuss if it's something we need to essentially bid out the removal of the debris.
but Public Works could potentially do some of the demolition here?
Eric feels that they could, I mean, he hasn't gone up there and walked it, but it's something that they'd be, at least have a conversation about.
Okay,
Great.
So,
Okay, we all in favor of that, removing the cost? Good.
so to be clear, we'll remove that line item
Yes.
from this capital. Okay.
Can we even talk about removing the Overlook Park field renovations line item? Cause that, I feel pretty confident that the Baldwin Baseball Association could do that. I mean, they got grants last time, before we renovated Overlook Park, redid those infields, so I'm sure that they could secure grants and stuff like that for that.
Not in time for the 2025 playing season. They, do have their own grant cycle that they've explained to me, and their rotation throughout the Baldwin fields, the Whitehall fields, and how they spread their grant money around, and Overlook was not in that window. So it was something that it would, if the borough does not bring it into playable condition, it would essentially sit until their grant cycle comes back around to it.
So but you put this in there in consultation with them?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Jesse was the first person I reached out to, Keith Maiden as well, got their input so that, whatever the borough would, if you choose to do this, it would meet their needs.
Okay, is there any other questions regarding any capital budget? Okay, Bob, let's move on to,
Well, before we move from capital, I just wanna kind of circle back to Mrs. Thomas's point about other upcoming
Sure.
things to keep on your radar. Obviously, we know the roof and the lighting situation upstairs, we're working through grants on that. HVAC is always something that's touch and go with this building. Additionally, the administration server, that is going to be coming due, in the next, year or two, so something to keep on your radar. The last quote I received from DEP was about 25,000. So that's up there. Other things that are always on our radar that they're not pressing, but certainly should be considered at some point, not immediately, but keep on your radar. We never completed the campus railing phase 2, which is the lot from the mailbox right out here down to the old Benson Lincoln dealership. That rail, the steps themselves are okay. Public Works has really, from the bottom end, taken out steps and asphalted what they could, but the railing there, that is something just on your radar. The paving of the municipal and the pool lots post-construction, it's been quite some time since they've been done. They work, they're not the prettiest, but those lots, parking lots are not, you cannot use liquid fuels funds for parking lots. So that would be a project that would strictly come out of the general. And then fuel pumps at Public Works, they still work. They're certainly older, but that would be, if those were to go, that would be a large expense that would have to be addressed immediately. So, nothing that you need to consider for 25 or 26, but keep it on your radar that these things could go at any time.
I'm sorry, can you circle back? I was writing too fast and it didn't work. You said HVAC and then there was something about technology or?
Server.
Server,
Yes,
thank
the
you.
computer
was
server, the one that we have was purchased in 2019 for the administration level. So it's nearing the end of its useful life. But we're okay for now, but that's obviously not something we can afford to be without for long. Now I'll move to the 2022 construction fund.
I'm trying to keep you moving.
No, thank you, Mr. Reed. This simply represents the pool construction project. Obviously, negotiations are ongoing to close this project out. So expenditures are simply representing what is still owed that has not been paid out in the contracts, excluding any potential settlement. So more or less this is being carried over until the legal side of this is resolved. Next up, local fiscal recovery fund. This represents the Overlook Park project. Obviously, the project is complete. We just sent out, I think, our last payout for Caliber that we had recently approved as a council. So this project, the project and the fund are anticipated being closed out by year end. So we're showing the zeros here for 2025.
Last page.
So then we move on to the debt service and transfers. So this is the 2022 note, does represent the pool construction costs. That when we took out the loan for the pool, we also refinanced the 2011 fire station loan and consolidated that into this single loan here. So that's what that represents up there. The transfer side, these will all have to be amended based on the discussions that you just had. So the transfers to capital project will obviously be edited. The second one there, the capital appropriations fire equipment, this is the 150 for Whitehall Fire Company that they had presented last week's meeting. So that transfer will be made in 2025 again. As of year end this year, they have 575,000 sitting in there ready for the truck fund. Running out those numbers based on the refurbishment presentation that they made last week. The borough can manage the money, I think 2030 is when there will have to be a discussion about a potential shortage based on what decisions are made in future budgets. But they've been really great to work with. I think there's a great plan in place from their end. And I think there's some grant opportunities that I've worked with the prior president, Will Hoagland. I'm working with the new team on their admin there to always be looking out for that we could even eliminate some of that shortage or save some money for ourselves, but that's years out. Capital appropriation pool, that 61 is the pool cover. It will show here as well. The pool, for whatever reason, historically, we've kept the pool appropriation separate from the capital projects appropriation, so that's simply why that's pulled out there. The transfer to the 2022 construction fund, again, the swimming pool, what we still owe as we work to settle that out. The transfer to stormwater fund, road improvements, is the West Club Phase 2, so that will be removed. And then similarly, the Overlook Park is just zeroed out as that project has been completed.
Any questions? I like how we moved the last 3 pages.
With that? Do my best. I guess one more, just final, adjustments here before you move into executive session. Circling back to the previously discussed, tax increase. This budget was prepared without a tax increase. That is how we as staff operate. So we will also need consensus from staff if you'd like us, consensus from council in preparation for the public hearing on December 4th. If there should be a budget prepared as this is, or we can go back, as we did last year, and do 2 budgets, one with no tax increase, one with the originally proposed half-mil increase, which is not gonna get us where we originally thought it would because of the county and their mess, quite frankly. And then the proposed 3/4 mil increase would take us to where we had anticipated a half-mil. So we need direction on what council's intent is there and how to prepare those budgets for the public hearing on the 4th.
Okay, can I add something to the discussion before you answer that question? So mayors have different roles in different communities, and one of the roles that I have tried to adopt in Whitehall is to always have council's back. So, for instance, when we raised taxes 90%, I volunteered to explain to the public, this was in 2004, why it was necessary to do that. With that in mind, last night I did some looking at council's property tax rate compared to others, wage tax rate compared to others, and real estate transfer tax, and this is what I'm leading up to. I think that, and I did propose this in 2004, we should have adopted it, but I think there's a really good basis for raising the realty transfer tax by 0.25. So there are 19 home rule communities in Allegheny County, okay? Braddock Borough, Bradford Woods, Clairton, and Richland all have 1%. That's lower than Whitehall. Whitehall has 1.25. But if you raise it a quarter, here are the boroughs and townships that you'll be in company with. Bellevue, 1.5. Bethel Park, 1.5. Greentree, 1.5. Hampton, McCandless, Monroeville, Mount Lebanon, O'Hara, Pine, Upper St. Clair, and West Deer. And then you have the city of McKeesport that has 2, you have Penn Hills that has 2, and you have the city of Pittsburgh that has 3. To me, this is kind of a no-brainer. If you, when you do a real estate transaction, the seller gets a whole bunch of money, and they're not gonna be missing too much with a little bit of an increase in the realty transfer tax. The buyer often, mortgages to buy, and so they're not gonna be missing that much. It's a great, I think if you're gonna raise taxes, it's a great tax to consider. And you'll be in the company with a lot of municipalities, I think that we would like to think ourselves comparable to. Mount Lebanon, Bethel, Upper St. Clair, and some of the ones in the north. So I would ask that council consider the idea of moving our realty transfer tax from 1.25 to 1.5 and be comparable to the other home rule communities that have it at 1.5.
What would that, net?
Good, I know your question.
This is the first we're hearing about this, so
No, I just thought about it last night, that's why I was late.
No, so staff can't
I'm
spit out
guessing-
something, we need to take time to review this.
I can ballpark. What's your realty transfer tax revenue?
This is the first meeting, so I don't have that handy.
Sorry about that. You have it?
Thanks, Gene. Appreciate it. I don't know what
I think it's 1/3. If you take the realty transfer tax revenues, divide by 1/3, I believe that's what you'll get. And the thing is, Whitehall homes are selling. I mean, I can't believe, a home on Dobby, somebody I knew sold for $325,000
Real
Doggy,
estate transfer tax, collected projected for 2024 was 360,000,
Okay.
which
What
was
page
short.
is that? I'm sorry.
It's page 4
Okay.
of the first meeting packet, if you have it.
Yeah,
in
I
front
have
of
it
you.
out.
So I would,
Act 511.
There we go, thank you.
Yes, so it's real estate transfer tax, and that was short of the 450 that we had budgeted based on previous collections in the $400,000 range. So we are only projecting 410 for next year, conservatively, as that does appear to have fallen.
right, so if the staff can double check me, but I think it'd be like 120,000,
Thank you, Jane.
which is, something.
So we can have to put that on the agenda for next week, is that what you said?
Staff really, we need to do some research on it. just-
I want the agenda, or I want this budget with, no tax increases. That's how I would like to see it.
We'd have to do a lot of cutting.
She just said she prepared this budget, the whole budget with.
This budget that you were
Well, I mean,
seeing
going into the
shows,
fund balance of it.
it drains down all the fund balances. Well, in this case, it'd be the general fund. So the previously discussed increase last year, budget time, had been the $500,000. As we know, with the county exonerating or, lowering our assessed value by 13 million,
Right.
plus the $200,000 refunds that we did not anticipate that were given out, that original quarter, $500,000 is not going to get us to where we had anticipated it being. If council goes through with it, decides to consider the $500,000 increase for 2025. A $750,000 increase would take us to where the original proposed $500,000 was going to get us, that was intended to carry us for the next few years, so that taxes wouldn't have to be raised every single year.
Thoughts, anyone?
The expenses are the expenses.
Yeah, this budget is not, there's no fluff
It's-
here.
yeah, I was
This
gonna say,
is
Very little we've debated to cut or not.
correct. Going from 2023 budget to this year's budget, if you recall, last year, I went through line by line and was able to find almost $200,000 in cuts that were already made. This is lean and mean. Obviously, capital expenditures are the biggest part of this, and, building, rebuilding, renovating parks, things of that nature. That's a huge expense, but additionally, we're in the, just finishing up the first year of a 5-year contract for trash, which that's gonna cost us $9.5 million over the life of it. Additionally, we're halfway through a police contract. Those contractual obligations are gonna increase $500,000, or add $500,000 in expenses over the course of that contract. Public Works ends in 2 years, so there's a couple $100,000 there that we're contractually obligated. The fire appropriations, continuing to save and keep that pace to meet their needs. That comes again out of capital. If those increase, because we know we need to have a shortage by 2030 based on the presentation that Steve and Ken gave, those are large numbers that have to come from somewhere. And if you're gonna deplete the fund balance in 2025 potentially, or really lower it to a dangerous amount, you're gonna have the same conversation next year.
Others? Yeah? Thanks. No comment? Okay.
I'm mulling it, but
Okay.
I'm leaning right at the moment toward no tax increase this year, but looking at, we're going to have to do it next year. The fund balance, over the years, I have changed my mind. Mr. McGowan and I argued about it for years as to what percent it should be. We're looking at the very lowest percent we could get away with. But I'm still mulling it.
Okay. Liz?
Can we see both? Is that?
Certainly. No, that's what we did last year, is
Yeah.
that we had prepared, a budget with no increase, and we can certainly prepare a budget with an increase. What the question then is, which increase? Cause a significant, and, it's nothing that the borough or this council or this staff did in the past year. It's Allegheny County changing their half of the millage formula
Right.
that has led to this discussion of the originally proposed or discussed $500,000 increase and breaking it across to pay for these next 5 years worth of expenses is not going to carry through simply because the county has devalued the community.
Okay, unless we have any unpredictable expenses, this 0.75 increase would be good for the next 5 years.
That is the intent, assuming that the county, we never know what they're gonna do
I
with their
understand.
assessments, but it is something that we can certainly work with for the next few years in managing, you know, doing a project here or there, you know, out of each fund every year instead of, you know, you can do all the projects you want every year, but it's gonna cost and run down your balance.
I'm reminded, I gotta talk to the people on the phone. Linda and, any comments?
Hold on, I'm trying to, do you hear me?
Yes,
Oh, okay, I wasn't sure if this was, I just keep running back and forth. You know, I don't want to increase taxes. I don't think anyone ever wants to. I think to be, responsible to cover what we need to, and especially what we're looking at, I would lean towards a, half a millage. Think that we could, get us through, and then perhaps think about the following year, whatever else we might have to do, but that's what I'm leaning towards right now, the half a millage.
and we can certainly prepare a budget with a, showing that.
Okay,
Thank you.
Beth Lynn?
Mrs. Iger?
Yes, I'm here, so I do think that, it's definitely a concern. And, as it was a concern, when we were in this place one calendar year ago, where we weren't really sure what the county was going to do. And, as months go by, it becomes even more and more real that cross-border tax reassessment others happen. We don't have a lot of, information as to exactly how it's going to go down, but I don't think that it will be on the assumption that we will, have less tax revenue, because I don't believe that there's any way, shape or form that Whitehall is raising in value. It was probably increased in value from the last assessment. Just given the local, house sales just around you, you just know that it's going to go up. Moreover, I thought that it's somewhat of a compromise to, think of, okay, so it would be a quarter mil rather than a half mil, which would be a little bit easier to swap back. Indeed, this is why I voted to increase the, payment for whoever becomes our next tax collector, whether it be, our current elected tax collector or someone else, because that's who actually deals with the brunt of the recalculation whenever millage might change, and as, values might change, on that map like that. And I think that statutory is doing an excellent job of that, and I would, definitely, want to do anything to support her in how, doing that simple as a transition for her as well as the residents to not, additional confusion. So, I flat out ask, what happened to the quarter mil conversation? Are we back onto the half mil conversation?
Well, we anticipated half a mil last year with what we raised the taxes last year, as well as what we anticipated for this year.
Correct, so the thought last year, the discussion last year was, given all the upcoming contractual obligations and how to afford them over the next 5 years, a mill increase was needed.
Right.
This council and prior members had elected to split it across 2 fiscal years so that it would be easier for the homeowner to absorb that. So a half mil was done for 2024. In consulting the tax collector, which the finance director and I sat down with her with real numbers and working through the exonerations, the additions, and the actual assessed value of where we stand, that half mil increase as it had been proposed, taking into account that we have a 97% collection rate, most pay at the 2% discount. We account for that 2% discrepancy. To get that same revenue, you would need to do a 3/4 mil increase, 0.75 increase, to get you to where previously the discussion had been at a 1/2 mil. That would then carry, assuming that the world doesn't end, carry us through the next few years as these large scale capital projects are done, as we have contractual obligations with 2 unions and the trash contract. Because the real number is that the community assessed value has decreased by 13 million. So that in turn is about $67,000 less that we are receiving. Revenues for this year were also down $156,000 in collections on real estate tax revenue. Additionally, the borough sent out $200,000 in refunds as individuals, specifically large property owners, appealed their taxes at the county. So there was a significant discrepancy there that we could not have planned for, and that's where the 3/4 mil proposed increase would get us back on track. But again, part of millage math is, the rate that you all set, which we have control over, but a large part of it, and the other half of it is the county, and they continue to work through their assessment as.
Okay.
Yeah, and then now I think that I understand what is, on the table here is, currently forced mill assessment hike, or we somehow go back to the drawing board in the tax cut, or create some other, sort of taxation stream, which, as I said earlier in the proceedings, it really cannot be income tax.
Okay, Beth, I think we got it. We got your idea, so we're gonna try to move on a little bit. Thank you, though.
I got one question. This means that we will not include storm water.
No, there's no talk on that right now, though.
Okay,
All
all
right,
right, great.
am I speaking to the group?
Yeah.
Okay.
And additionally, on the sanitary side, at this point, staff is not recommending changing the multiplier, but certainly it's your discretion to do so.
Okay, so what do we got, what are we preparing for?
Can I
Go ahead,
add my
question.
input? Just 2 things. One is I really want council to consider the realty transfer tax. That'll blunt it a little bit. I don't know if there's anything the staff has to do. Basically, if you raise it 1/4, it'll bring in about 120,000 more in revenue. You're consistent with all, again, the communities that we compare ourselves with. So I would really ask council to direct the manager to at least consider a 1/4 increase in the realty transfer tax. The other point that I would like to make is that just because you're changing the millage does not necessarily mean that you're taking more taxes from our residents. If the increase in millage is because the assessments have been lowered, in order to bring the number up to the same amount that you take in, you gotta increase the millage. So I think there has to be some recognition that if we're doing this because of a decrease in assessments, it doesn't necessarily mean that we're increasing the dollar amount, obviously to some extent, but not to the full extent.
Right.
When you raise the millage, there has to be some kind of recognition that you're doing it, it's a multiplier in order to get to the amount. If it's the same amount, if we had the same budget year to year, and they drop the assessments, we'd have to increase the millage in order to get to the same amount.
Good point.
But that doesn't mean you're taking more taxes out of the people.
That's a
Jake,
good
why
point.
don't you describe that, yes.
Yeah, so it's millage math, it's an
Millage
equation,
math.
yeah, that's what I call it, it's an equation though,
Okay.
and this body is only responsible for half of it. Some would say like the lesser half of it, when the county's, changing the assessed value of this whole community, it's just math, it's numbers.
So you can look into what Jim's suggesting.
We can certainly look into that, but also that amount is not gonna come close to.
No, that's true.
No, we know that.
But it'll
Yeah,
get it.
so
It will
the
help.
direction
It'll help.
is council considering just the mayor's proposal? I mean, to carry, the original plan to carry this borough through, these contractual obligations over the next 5 years, are you just kicking this conversation
My
to next year?
thought is we had talked about putting it at $500,000 last year and $500,000 this coming year.
Correct.
And if we could save that with a possible transfer tax, I would be in favor of that.
We can, as staff, prepare a budget for both that shows no tax increase and one that shows an increase for the half mil and the quarter mil. I'll check the mayor, and we can prepare that, have both of them there on the 4th, because then obviously there will be corresponding ordinances that have to be adopted
I think that'd be fair.
to change rates.
Yeah, that provides information.
And if you could at least even just say, just that raising that quarter mil transfer tax will bring us that $100,000 that we're estimating, just so we have that.
It's the first we're hearing about it, so
Yeah,
we'll have to run the numbers on what
Mayor,
that
thank you,
would
by the way.
look like.
Yeah, no, and I'll be happy to provide you, Jackie.
Yeah.
With in my analysis of the home rule, only home rule communities can do this. There's 19 in Allegheny County, and we wanna be consistent with them, and again, these are the people that we look to.
That's why you're the mayor.
Okay.
Anything else?
Yeah, if we're gonna raise taxes, I have 4 motions that I'd like to propose. Cause I think tax increases should be taken extremely seriously, especially here in Whitehall. We have a large community of people that live on fixed income. So, my first motion is, I motion if we as a borough raise taxes, I believe council and mayor should forfeit their salary for the 2025 budget year. Anybody wanna second that?
To be clear, this would be a motion to add a motion to the November 20th agenda.
Yes.
I would second that, that's what my,
Okay, got a motion and a second.
To add to
To add to
the
the
agenda.
Add to the
Add to
agenda.
the agenda.
And then we can discuss it then, but we can't discuss it now.
And what's
I-
the goal of that, just as a,
Well, if the
Symbolism-
taxpayers
symbolism.
have to take a financial hit, we should also as leadership. I mean, that's.
But we will also,
Be taking a financial.
we will also be taking a financial hit as a member of the,
That we are all.
You know,
Okay, tax
And I'd have to look into the
Is that
rules on
allowed?
that.
I don't think you can lower a salary during the time. that-
That's,
It's
I
elections
think you
and
can,
it's
yeah,
such
Just
a
like you
ordinance.
can't raise it
Yeah,
either.
you can't raise it, but you can't lower
Right,
it.
I would have to look into that. I know you, for sure you can't, obviously you can't raise sitting salaries.
But
I'd have to look into whether. you
Generally,
can
they take
lower it.
effect next
I
election,
don't
it's
think
not
you can
current.
decrease it.
Yeah,
I believe we have, then everybody would have to like donate their money back, I don't know. So no, nobody wants to.
Well, that's different, right? You can, I mean, that's, you get paid, but that, it comes out, taxes come out, different things come out anyway.
Every single penny back.
Okay.
And,
Okay.
one can make the argument that I already have.
But, so to be clear, there's a motion and a second to add this to the November 20th agenda.
That would-
Is there-
that would give us roughly what, like $27,000?
Yes.
Right?
Again,
No, I'm looking at, sorry, not you, but-
30 plus.
This is the legal side of it, first of all.
It'd be like 30-some thousand, 32,000 or something like that.
Okay.
And this is just for the calendar year of the year that we actually raise the taxes. I mean, you get your stipend every year that, it should be benefit if you don't raise taxes, you should get your, stipend.
Okay,
But you wouldn't be able to raise it the next year, because if the solicitor finds out you can drop it, you certainly can't, it's pretty clear, I think we're all in agreement on this, is you can't increase it, so if you dropped it, you couldn't increase it.
And again,
This
just to
is
be
just,
clear,
you're
I'm
giving
not
up your
certain,
salary for the
I'm not certain
year
you
of the
can-
budget.
I'm not certain you can legislate that. I mean, I think, but I'll look into it to confirm.
You certainly can, because you're donating.
That's different.
That's
No,
different than
that's
what you
different.
just said,
It's
though.
agreed, okay.
If you wanna say that everybody gets, because again, the amount that's paid, I believe, withholding
Yeah, it's a paycheck, so there's
Right,
payroll
so-
taxes that come out
so
of it,
that
the borough's
net-
obligated to,
your net, you're always free. I
yeah,
suppose you can
donations
donate.
are accepted anytime.
Right, but you can't, the cost isn't, there's a lot of costs that go into the payroll cost that you're not gonna save, this is my point, but I don't, again, I'm not certain, and that'd be the only way, I don't think you can legislate changing the salary midterm.
Okay.
So there is a motion and a second to add this to the November 20th agenda.
oh, do
But
we
you
need
need
a-
to
So you have
vote.
to vote on
Mr.
it.
President,
You have to
call for
vote
a
on it
vote.
to add.
I said it's good.
No, you have to vote on it to add.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I'd be happy to discuss
what we're
something, but I
talking
wanna hear more. I wanna hear more, so I'll say yes for the purpose of discussion.
It's three.
I guess we
But
better
that's
go.
three to, that's only, 3 to 4, so, but I would like to hear his other motions first,
Okay.
honestly, before I
I think
vote.
people on the phone, so-
Ms. Book the motion on the floor is to, add this first motion to the November 20th agenda for discussion.
No,
Okay, Mrs. Depew,
No.
Mrs. Iker,
Yes.
Mr. Lucetti,
No,
Mrs. Thomas,
Yes, for purpose of discussion.
Mr. Sobrowski,
Yes.
and Mr. B.
No.
Okay, the motion fails.
Okay, my second motion. I motion if the only if, these are all, only if the borough raises taxes. If the borough raises taxes, we should spend 0 on conference expenses for the year of 2025 budget. So that means no goodies and stuff, no going to Seven Springs, no
No education.
Erie.
I found that very helpful to be at that, so I would, yeah.
Well, you need
Well,
a
you could get
second.
mailed, you could get emailed the packets, the educational packets, you don't have to go
It's the
to.
connections you make too, so.
Yeah,
Mr. Sobrowski, sorry.
Is there a second? Give me a motion.
I will second that because I actually waived all of my own personal travel fees. And I would, like that anyone else would actually follow my leadership on that. I think that it's somewhat, an insult to our taxpayers that there are these lavish retreats that we go to the tune of around $30,000 in the budget.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, we're gonna do another roll call.
Ms. Book,
no, and Mrs. Depew and I, we attend PSAB free for I don't know how many years because we donate our time as trustees and board of directors. And the only other conference would be the ALON, but that being said, there's nothing like going in person and learning from other boroughs, and if you enjoy it, there's nothing wrong with when you're learning at the same time, no.
Mrs. Depew,
No.
Mrs. Iker,
Yes.
Mr. Lucetti,
No,
Mrs. Thomas,
no.
Mr. Sobrowski,
Yes.
Mr. B.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay.
Good.
Third motion, I motion that, only if we raise taxes for the 2025 budget year, all non-union employees take a pay freeze for that year.
Is there a second?
Because 2 years ago, I don't know if you guys remember or not, they got pay increases of like upwards of 10% for a lot of them.
What
I
are they
will
this year?
second
Huh?
because
What are they this year?
there have been
3.
numerous complaints that I've heard from the citizens regarding the administration pay rate.
You got a second, another roll call.
Ms. Book,
No,
Mrs. Depew,
No.
Mrs. Iker,
Yes.
Mr. Lucetti,
no,
Mrs. Thomas,
No.
Mr. Sobrowski,
Yes.
Mr. B.
No.
The motion fails.
Good, fourth.
Okay, number 4. I motion, for a special budget meeting to go over the proposed 2025 budget line by line to look for any cost savings we could possibly have for the taxpayers.
When would
how
you
is
do
that
this?
separate than what we just did the last 3 weeks?
Because we didn't go line by line.
Yeah.
Very
Yeah,
much so.
absolutely.
Okay.
Okay, is there a second for that motion?
Well, everybody just accepted the budget at face value. Nobody thought, okay, well, we have to raise taxes by $500,000, let's see what we can cut here, you know?
That, I did.
You did?
That's
Okay.
why I went through
Because
the
we,
meeting, I
because
sent my
at
questions.
last year's budget meeting, we
I have a whole
discussed
list
it.
of questions just to make sure of all this, so that's
Is there
why
a
I did.
second on this?
If you didn't, that's on you.
There's a motion, there's no second right now.
I did.
A second, okay, move on to your
So
fifth.
That was
I'll
it.
second
Number 4 was it.
for discussion purposes, simply because I do
Well-
believe that, we met,
Well,
and South State now, and I do feel that everything is somewhat necessary in this. The places where I would feel that there would be eyebrows would raise from a constituent is regarding the, park work when we have so many necessary things to do in the children's center.
There's a motion.
Well,
on the
can
table.
I ask a question for a second? We're all, I mean, you're in a budget meeting right now. I'm just trying to understand, you're in a budget meeting right now.
I'm essentially saying to go over the budget again and go see, we gotta cut, gotta cut taxes, we gotta cut something, you know? We can't just raise
That's
taxes,
what the
raising
last 3
taxes
meetings
is
were for. Please tell
immoral.
us what to cut. That's what the last 3 meetings, Mr. Soborowski, that's what the last 3 meetings were. Mr. Soborowski,
What?
that's what the last 3 meetings were, this and the last 2. Where?
Just because
tell me
you
what to
could
cut.
afford it doesn't mean everybody
No,
in the
no,
borough
that's
could
not the point,
afford it.
I hear you.
Okay? It's
You were talking
immoral.
about cutting things,
It's
these last
theft
3 meetings,
to a
you've not
degree.
brought anything up to cut. Do you wanna bring them up now?
Yeah,
This
I
is the
just
time.
did. A couple of the things I brought up, the pay raises,
Okay, there's about 30 plus 15.
administrative staff pay raises. I mean, we could go through the budget, like I said, overall, I mean, the budget's
But we just spent,
6 hours long. I mean, we could go through
Why
it
don't we
again.
just do another roll call, please?
Okay, so Ms. Book,
No.
Mrs. Depew,
No.
Mrs. Iker,
Yes.
Mr. Lucetti,
No,
Mrs. Thomas,
no,
Mr. Soborowski,
Yes.
Mr. B.
No.
Motion fails.
Okay, is there anything else?
I just, if I were you guys, I'd feel really bad for everybody in the borough, especially with the big tax hikes that's happening with the county. A lot of we live in the oldest county in pretty much the whole country. The only other counties that are older than us are located in Florida. So a lot of these people that you just agreed to raise taxes to are seniors living paycheck to paycheck on fixed income. And you had no problem with raising taxes.
Okay.
So I just wanna leave the meeting at that.
can I make one comment back? So we've been meeting for 6 hours over this budget that we have gone through line by line. That was absolutely your opportunity, as it was everybody else's, to say, is there something in this particular line item that we can cut? You were able to bring up discussion, I'm sorry, just 1 second, Pat. We had every opportunity as a council right here in front of everybody for the last 6 hours to say that. So how can you say that we haven't had discussions and that we need another line by line?
And to add to that,
I
you
don't
know, I know
understand.
on public safety, how many times, Chief, did we talk about the budget? You and I, we went over line by line by
Every
line.
week.
So it has been done,
Okay.
so.
And to talk about, the salaries that we get are minuscule. I mean, compared to the time that we put in, you know, it doesn't even come close. You know, everybody in this room, well, a number of people in this room know, you know, how many phone calls, how many, you know, all the effort that's being made all around. You know, for $37,000, it's not gonna be, you know, do anything in the budget. And on the education, one of the best stories I can give, I was instrumental through the Pennsylvania State Mayors Association in having a provision put in the borough code that would pay mayors when they go, their expenses when they go to a conference. And I made the pitch to the House Local Government Committee. And I talked about, this was right after, I don't know if you remember Hurricane Ivan, I think it was Ivan, came through the state and it destroyed, you know, a lot of central Pennsylvania. It was a really bad hurricane. And we had just had our conference, and at our conference, we had a program on the role of the mayor in an emergency. And so one of the mayors who attended that conference sent me an email from a mayor whose town got devastated. The residents came in and complained to the mayor, and the mayor said, I didn't know what to do. And the mayor who sent that to me, who did come to the conference, said, Jim, because of that conference, I did know what to do in that emergency. Those educational programs are invaluable to the elected officials. And, you know, the state of Pennsylvania has recognized that, and we need to continue. If we want to be the best that we can be, we need to be able to go to those educational programs and bring it back to our communities. So,
Thanks, Jim.
May I just say
Yeah, go ahead,
one
sure.
thing? Jim knows this is coming. Let's stop spending our money on killing deer. That program,
no, I didn't know it was coming.
well, that's my suggestion as a tax
blindsided me, Pat.
No more money on killing deer, that's wasted. Nature will take care of that, and I don't wanna get into the numbers of bent fenders and all this. If people stop down, slow down, drive carefully, we can exist with nature. Let's wipe out the, I don't even know, but $10,000 sticks in my mind. Enough on that deer program. Set it back to nature and we'll have some money. Thank you.
Thank you, Pat. Okay, anything else we have to do?
Can I just, real quick comment, I'm sorry, did you
Go
mind
ahead,
if I
make
say
it
something
quick,
real
please.
quick?
Go ahead.
I think what Stone was getting at, and this is just from an outsider, is Mr. Mayor, you just talked about, you went and found this information out, so you were late coming to the meeting today, you wanna give her more information about this taxes, quarter of the mill raise, and I think if the mayor's gonna still discuss it with this office manager, I think it's time you could all discuss it, because I was kind of blindsided, I could care less what these other communities do, I don't have to be neck and neck with them. But I think if the mayor's gonna talk to the manager, ops manager about this, then why can't you table it to have it for a discussion? I don't care if you have to go by line to line again. But I
Well,
think
we feel like
him just bringing this
We
up,
appreciate that, we feel that we've
And
done
just-
that.
Well, I wanna hear what the mayor, I
Off
wanna
the
hear what
cuff,
the
That's
mayor
what we've
he-
asked for,
Yeah.
is different versions of the budget that
right,
include the mayor's
but I
ideas.
still think it's up to him,
We
if
have one
he's,
of the
he still
highest
has questions about it,
income
and all of
tax
you,
in the county.
I just think
It's a
you should
spending
allow
problem.
everybody to have their
Well, that
piece
doesn't
and
affect
talk
senior
about
citizens
this,
then.
once everything's presented.
It's still
So I
taxes
don't
in
think you
It
general.
should
does not
just
affect senior
shut it
citizens.
off like,
Okay, we ready for
Nothing.
adjournment? Okay.
from an outsider point of view.
Recess to executive?
I think taxes are really
We have
important,
recess?
and when people
Wait, you
hear
don't have
that,
to do anything?
No.
especially on people on fixed incomes, and I think that's what he's looking out for. I think it should be open for your discussion, maybe the executive meeting or whatever.
Thank you.
Did
Okay,
anybody
I
else
need a
in here
motion.
get a pay raise of $4,500? Because one of our administrative staff members.
Got it, Jane. Real quick.
I really, Jane Cassiato, 5348 High Grove Road. All I want to say is that for people who pay taxes, your taxes are an investment in your community. You should be looking more at what you're getting for your tax. If you're getting the thing that you want to get for your tax, you've invested for it. When we get better parks, we've invested for that. I pay taxes as an investment into Whitehall. If Whitehall tells me it's gonna cost me more, it's no different than when the cable company raises their bill, when the electric company raises their bill. It's my investment in this town, and everybody should be, the misunderstanding about taxes is that taxes are terrible and everybody should avoid them at every cost. Paying taxes is one of the most patriotic American things we do. And you just don't, you gotta talk more about what you want out of those taxes than the freaking price tag. I'm tired of hearing about the price tag. You can't have what you want and what you want. They're mutually exclusive.
Jane, thank you.
Sorry.
That's fine.
Let's do a 2 mil tax
Okay,
increase,
wait.
that's
We got a
patriotic. Why don't we
motion.
do that then?
We got a motion.
2 mils, let's
Okay, all in
do
favor, say
prepare a
aye.
budget for 2 mil tax increase.
Yeah, alright, motion is adjourned at 11:36.
to executive session.
God bless you.